LPT, if you find yourself in an abusive relationship that is hard to extricate yourself from, get a storage unit. Many cities having moving companies who will help move out people who are being abused for free. There are also groups who will foster your pets until you are back in a safe place. Stay safe. People banding together to protect victims without any self-interest really makes me thankful to humanity. This is my go-to response to "we don't deserve dogs sometimes. We do okay. Most people are actually pretty decent. The problem is that the shitty ones are more likely to get into positions of power, largely because they are willing to do shitty things to get to those positions. So it skews our perceptions on how decent the human race actually is. At the same time though, even decent people can be incredibly selfish or being otherwise shitty from time to time. Still getting used to this fact. Not the least because my brain has a tendency to jump to black and white conclusions. Close bracket. Tag on. Tell the storage unit management if you're renting a unit for this purpose. Ask them to make a note in your file that they are not to verify your rental over the phone for any reason, or to grant access to anyone other than you or your pre-approved proxy. Any manager who's a human being will do what they can to help in that regard. I own a storage facility, and I get this a / lot. Either this, or people who are doing a 2-hour blitz move with all family and friends helping to move everything. Not that we give info out as a rule anyway, but we are super duper special zipper lips for people who ask. Edit. Whoa. Awards. That's crazy. Thanks. Thank you for the part you play in helping these people. I'm glad there are people who give this kind of help. I'm sad that there are people who need this kind of help. Look for the helpers. There will always be helpers. Apostrophe. I once worked with a waitress, Mary, who was caught in that situation. Her husband did all the driving and took her tips and check. Once a week he'd remind her that if she tried to leave him he'd kill her. One of our regulars was a therapist who got through to her. Mary brought some legal documents hidden in the lining of her purse and asked our manager to make copies. He did, and put the originals in the safe. He also stashed a few dollars of her tips here and there in the safe. Meanwhile, the therapist had her lunch in our break room with Mary twice a week. After a few months, Mary got out of her husband's car, walked in the front door, said goodbye to her gathered friends, walked out the back door, and got into the therapist's car to drive to a shelter in a city 2 hours away. Every few months she'd send an American flag postcard, unsigned. So we knew she was okay. That was 40 years ago. But if she's still out there, I love you. Mary. Edit. Several people have asked what Mary's husband did. Let's call him John. At 2:55 p.m. John parked in a front parking slot reserved for disabled people. As always, he wasn't disabled. Most of the first shift employees left as usual. When Mary hadn't come out by 3:10, John came inside, building up steam. Employees and managers warned him, demanding to know where Mary was. It wasn't difficult to go ballistic and hysterical on that bastard. Manager and head cook, also male, did most of the talking. Mary hadn't shown up that day. We didn't call her at home because of John's rule against it. What bullshit game was he playing? Pretending he dropped her off. We had 100 witnesses to say he didn't. Maybe he was keeping her chained in the basement. Maybe he had killed her. If Mary didn't show up safe and sound, the manager was going to file a missing persons report and ask the police to do a well check and bring luminol. John was not so subtly reminded that Mary's bloodstains were all over his property. John said he'd file a report, but of course he never did. My uncle was a newly retired police detective, and he boldly questioned John at his favorite bar about a week later without claiming he was on official police business. John stalked some of us, but it did him no good. I moved away, but I heard John died of a drug overdose down by some railroad tracks a few years later. Good riddance. Edit. Thank you for the awards, but I don't deserve them. Just for telling the story. Our manager an incredibly good man, and that therapist, and especially Mary, deserve all the honors. There's something incredibly powerful about an unsigned postcard, and knowing exactly what is meant by it. Postcards were like posters on a utility pole. Like party phone lines from 60 years ago. Everyone who saw or listened would be privy. The empty postcard was there for any to see, but only one would know. Exquisite. The real trick is to figure out how to buy the time to drive to a storage unit / load things there unseen. I had a super abusive boyfriend who tracked me 24/7, didn't let me drive, etc. Escaping severe abusers is no joke. It's really dangerous. The most violent time can be when you're leaving / attempting to leave. If they find out you've got a hidden storage unit, you'll be in so much trouble. I lost literally everything I owned, except my actual life and the clothes on my back. Make a solid plan before leaving. And then please do not go back. How did you get away? The short version doesn't make much sense, since a lot happened the day I left, and the following day. There was my stolen and totaled car. I had all of my belongings stolen, and I reached out to my estranged father who had been isolated from for literally years, and my dad drove 300 miles to pick me up from the police station after filing a very thorough report against my abuser, who was arrested, charged with several crimes and ultimately sentenced to 3 years. I lived with my dad for 6 months while working at a Starbucks and at a bar until I saved enough to get my own place. This was 10 years ago, and literally only 6 people in my life know about it. I had a lot of therapy. This made me cry. I'm so glad you reached out to your dad and he came to get you. I hope your relationship with your dad has improved significantly and you've both grown since then. Kudos to you for the successful GTFO. I wish I could have followed this advice, but he would make me use my SSA check for the rent and the utilities, and I had no money left over. I wasn't allowed to leave the apartment unless he said that I could. But one day, just out of the blue, I got the chance to run and I took it. I left with the clothes on my back and what was in my purse. I've grieved for the pictures and keepsakes that I had to leave behind. But I'm alive and I keep my loved ones' memories in my heart. If you can follow the advice given by OP, do it. But, most of all, be safe. That's harsh. I hate people like that. I'm sorry you lost your stuff. Happened to me too, but not as severe, but glad you are safe now and away from that creep. I'm also happy that you are safe. Thanks. This is good advice, especially the use cash part. It's important to note that reputable storage facilities may not take cash. They don't want you keeping illegal shit on their premises nor to have the cops constantly sniffing around looking for easy drug busts. But since people will want to store illegal shit anyway, they'll likely want a legitimate tie back to you before they'll rent your unit. Don't be surprised if they want to photocopy your ID and have you pay with a credit card. Ugh, yes. This whole conversation brings up bad memories. Basically, I drove around with a black garbage bag in my car to donate, but it actually helped escape clothes for me and my kids. My mom had to escape someone with me and my sister when we were little and ended up in a women's shelter. It wasn't the nicest place in the world, but the workers were nice to us, and I remember not feeling afraid for the first time in a while. The odd thing is I don't remember who we were hiding from. I'm pretty sure it wasn't my father. He was a deadbeat, but not abusive. Man. My ex-boyfriend's mom used to volunteer in a woman's shelter, and she told me this story of how she used to read fairy tales to kids. This is in Germany. One of the boys who lived there with his mom and his sisters who all escaped such a relationship always wanted to hear the story of the 7 little goats. For reference, the story goes that there's a mom goat with 7 kids and a wolf comes and kidnaps and eats all but one. The little goat and mom find the wolf asleep, cut the others out of his stomach, and kill him by filling it with stones, throwing him in the river. Then they all celebrate and sing "The wolf is dead. The wolf is dead." That was his favorite part. Can't imagine why he liked that story. My sister was in an extremely abusive relationship. She knew she had to get out before he killed her, as it was a matter of time. She also knew if she tried to leave him, he would kill her. She got an apartment that he knew nothing about. She furnished it over a few weeks with the necessary items she would need to leave. When she knew it was time, she loaded up the clothes she wanted, but it wasn't obvious that all of her clothes were gone, and she left. This was before iPhones, tracking, etc. But she put a plan together and knew she got out. Took her almost 20 years to trust a man again. I wish I had that sort of insight. This man was a demon and disarmed my car, so I could not leave among many other scary things. One day I loaded up my car with all my precious stuff and had to fight to get away, but I did. I never got any of my other stuff. He refused. It's better this way than having stayed. I'm proud of you. I did the same. I waited until he left for work one night, fit everything I could in my car, and fled. I left so much behind, but it didn't matter. I could keep my towels, or I could keep my life. Seriously. Good way to look at it. I just wish I didn't still get upset from it. It's like I have PTSD and it's been 7 years since I left. What are some ways you've found yourself getting over it? It's been 12 years and honestly, it still messes with me. I was so beaten down. Physically and mentally, I thought I deserved everything bad that was happening to me, and being told so constantly just pushed it further into my mind. He would try to goad me into suicide and I did try a couple of times. Convinced that I was the problem. That was the biggest thing. Convincing myself that I deserved anything better than what I was experiencing. I was diagnosed with CPTSD, and it's been such a struggle. I still sometimes have nightmares that he's found me and he's outside ready to hurt me. I sleepwalk a lot, walking around and making sure the blinds are shut, doors and windows locked. I've been in and out of therapy a lot over the years and it's helped tremendously. The thing that has probably helped the most is to view myself as someone in need of protection. I feel protective of my friends in bad situations. Why not myself? Appeal to your inner child, because aren't we all just who we were as children? Just in ever-aging bodies? Is that child frightened or scared or anxious? Fiercely protect that child. Do what you would for a friend in need. Be gentle and kind with yourself and encourage yourself. You are as deserving of love and care as anyone. Once I practiced that for a while, I built up boundaries without blocking people out and put up with much less bullshit. If an abusive relationship does nothing else, it shows you the red flags to watch out for next time. I will say, though, to this day, I struggle with relationships. I'm too scared to be with a man who can physically overpower me. Even with male friends I've had for years, men I know I can trust, I still feel jumpy and anxious. I'm not sure how to trust someone enough to let them be near to me. Maybe I never will, and that is a part of life I won't have, but I care enough about myself now, so it's fine. I don't know if any of this helped, but if you ever need to talk, my inbox is open. This is great advice. I'd like to add copies of legal documents such as birth certificates, passports, immunizations, important phone contacts, family, lawyers, shelters. Also, turn off your phone and look into having a burner phone with new SIM card in your storage. Have a mechanical PD check to make sure there isn't a GPS device installed / in your vehicle. Stay away from social media and turn off location services if you must go on for some reason. I know it's not easy to leave, especially if they are threatening to hurt you, family / pets if you do. This is why planning ahead is the way to go. Birth certificates are easy to get replaced BTW from the Vital Records Department. Social security cards not so much. Mail those to someone you can trust to hold on to ASAP. Might be a case of where you are living. Had a client not too long ago, trying to replace her driver's license, needed a birth certificate or passport to prove her id, but couldn't get either without her DL, the most common form of picture id. Also depends on how close you live to where you were born. If you live states or countries away, difficulties add up. I had a storage unit for a while as I was preparing to downsize. I had a psychotic flatmate, serious mental health issues. So I did feel sorry for him, but fuck, that man was hard work. The storage unit was occasionally a nice safe quiet spot just to potter around a bit. Maybe read for a bit. Or just do nothing and stare at the wall. I need a lot of quiet to function properly, and that was a good spot. So, good advice. I think just knowing your valuables are safe and keeping a spare toothbrush etc can be reassuring. This is good. Just be cautious that if they follow you, they do not follow you there. especially if it's late at night. Few people are around at storage units, and if he/she follows you there, it could be scary getting caught. Just be wise with how you go there. Always have an escape route. Agreed. As the owner of a self-storage facility, I can tell you that sleeping in a unit can be dangerous, since you never know who might surprise you in the confined space. Managers are trained to check locks daily, and will often put a company lock in place if one is not present. This also means that, since you cannot secure the unit from the inside, you are sleeping in an unlocked space and pretty vulnerable considering there is no one around to hear you scream. Yeah, it's all around not a good idea to try and sleep in a storage unit, especially if you have a crazy and abusive ex after you. Have you watched season 2 of You? What's bizarre to me is a storage unit that big. It was the size of a house. I haven't seen anyone talk about that yet. It was. I always wondered how it could be big enough to fit the glass box and have extra space for tools and to walk around. Also, there are groups like Bikers Against Child Abuse that can step in situations like this. They normally work with kids, but I guarantee, if you're a woman and don't feel safe getting your stuff out of the house because you think they will come home, they would be happy to stand guard for you and escort you. They all go through extensive federal background checks too. So reach out. People are there to help you. It also works well for custody transfers. I've got a few MC friends and they're ready and willing to stand guard at my house during the exchange period, which I find safer than meeting me in a public parking lot. I have a lot more witnesses in case he tries to say anything that wouldn't be caught on a store camera. I guess this isn't directly related to the LPT, but I just wanted to say that reading this thread and seeing other people's stories of having to leave suddenly while their spouse was at work or out of the house with nothing but what they could throw in their car made me feel a lot less alone. I had to do exactly that last year, one of the most terrifying and anxiety-inducing events of my life, and I still have very little and am trying to rebuild. Some days I'm just broken down and crying over how little I feel I have. But reading this made me remember that though I don't have a lot of material possessions anymore, I have other things, my life, my physical health, a few loved ones who care. I'm so sorry to anyone still going through this, and I hope you get out. And to Op, thanks for posting this LPT, because it brought a lot of people out in the comments. So it touched me in ways you may not have initially anticipated. Hey, it'll get better. I had to do the same thing after 6 years of abuse. It took me a few years, but I got my shit together. You can too. You're just as strong. Taking that first step out of the house was the strongest thing you ever did. The rest will be a piece of cake. You don't know that now, but you will looking back. You'll meet someone else, like I did, and you'll know that they're good and kind, because you've seen the opposite of that, and you know what it looks like. You'll get new things. They'll be just as nice as the old things, if not nicer. You'll have new experiences that you're actually allowed to enjoy. You can take a nap whenever you damned well feel like it. It's hard, but you can do it. A few years from now you'll be able to tell someone the same thing I just told you. Last guy I dated would disconnect the internet, so I couldn't contact any of my friends through Facebook or messengers. At the time my cell phone mysteriously broke. Any calls I made to family from the house phone was monitored by him standing right outside the door or 2 feet away. I packed a bag and left since he was destroying anything important to me anytime he felt slighted. My mom said I sounded weird, so she decided to stop by. I left while he was at work. Broke up with him via email, cause he kept calling my family. He told me he was gonna burn whatever I left behind. Material things are just that. Note to self and anyone else. If you're gonna move in with someone, hang on to your lease or sublet. Keep finances separate. If you're not married, it's none of their business. You never really know someone till you live together and under their thumb. Went to college with this guy and talked to him every single day for over a year. Had no idea he was a controlling nutjob. Have zero intentions of living with anyone ever again. That's so scary. Did he ever give off any sign of controlling behavior before you moved in? Absolutely not, which is what took me by surprise. He seemed like a decent guy. When I started college and we were in the same classes, he offered to show me around. After a few weeks he'd buy me coffee in the mornings. We'd hang out on breaks. He was never jealous of any friendships I had with other guys in class at the time. He was attentive and a good listener. I even dated other guys while we were friends and he never reacted negatively. He told me how his mom was never really in his life growing up. He never showed any outward signs of codependency until moving in. He was never clingy at all while getting to know him. It seemed as if things escalated from 0 to 100 over pass. I find this terrifying. I've been with my dude for a year and a half. Don't live together, but I feel like I know him pretty well. I can't fathom him doing any of this, but I guess you never really know someone. No red flags, seems insane. Go with your gut. Looking back, he was consistent. His actions didn't match up with my gut feeling, and I ignored it thinking that maybe I was being paranoid cause of a previous breakup. Don't tank your relationship based off this experience. Just be careful. Moving in together is a huge step regardless. Always good to have a backup plan or a safety net. If your partner has ever frightened you, but has convinced you it was a mistake, follow the advice here. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.